Standing in my parents' backyard watching my sister Madison's perfect graduation celebration, I held my phone showing a bank balance that would change everything. $2.3 million. The same parents who called my online jewelry business silly internet games were about to learn the truth. Madison, their golden child with her finance degree, had just announced her $60,000 starting salary to applause. I was about to shatter their world with my success story they never believed in. 3 years earlier, when I first started selling handmade jewelry from my cramped dorm room at the local community college, I never imagined the depth of humiliation my own family would put me through. What made their mockery especially cruel was that my parents, David and Carol, weren't strangers to business themselves. They owned Henderson Books, a dusty independent bookstore, downtown that had been hemorrhaging money for the better part of a decade. Every Sunday dinner became an interrogation about my little computer hobby, as my father liked to call it. He would lean back in his chair, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses with that condescending smile I had grown to despise, and ask how many pretend sales I had made that week. My mother would chime in with her signature eye roll, suggesting I focus on real subjects instead of wasting time playing store on the internet. The irony was suffocating. Here were two people whose business was failing so spectacularly that they had asked me for loans 3 separate times in the past year to keep their store afloat, yet they treated my growing online venture like a child's game. My jewelry sales had started modestly with friendship bracelets and simple wire-wrapped pendants, but within 6 months, I was consistently earning $400 to $600 per week. Madison, who was then finishing her pre-med requirements before switching to finance, would sit at those same dinner tables with her perfectly straightened blonde hair and practice smile, nodding along as our parents dissected my business choices. She had mastered the art of appearing supportive while delivering cutting remarks disguised as concern. "I just worry that Kelsey isn't being realistic about her future," she would say, reaching across the table to pat my hand with false sympathy. "Online businesses are so unpredictable, and she needs something stable like the rest of us." What none of them understood was that I was already earning more per month than my father brought in from his bookstore. While they laughed at my amateur photography of jewelry pieces spread across my dorm room desk, I was studying every aspect of digital marketing, customer service, and product development with the intensity of a medical student. My business began with a simple observation during my freshman year. The campus jewelry selection was either cheap plastic pieces that turned skin green within hours or overpriced boutique items that cost more than most students' monthly food budgets. I started creating affordable, durable pieces that looked expensive but remained accessible to college budgets. The first breakthrough came when I posted photos of my wire-wrapped stone pendants on social media. Within 24 hours, I had received 37 messages from girls wanting to purchase pieces. By the end of that week, I had sold 63 items and realized I needed to treat this like a real business, not a hobby. But at home, every small victory was met with patronizing smiles and suggestions that I should focus on my studies instead. My parents would exchange meaningful glances when I mentioned shipping packages or updating my online inventory as if I were describing an elaborate fantasy game rather than a legitimate business generating real revenue. The most painful moment came during Madison's fall break when she brought home her boyfriend Tyler, a business major from Northwestern with an internship at a Chicago investment firm. The entire family gathered in our living room as Tyler explained his career trajectory and future earning potential. When my parents asked about my internet business, Tyler actually laughed out loud. "Oh, like Etsy stuff," he said, barely concealing his amusement. "That's cute. Madison told me you make jewelry. My sister did that in high school, too." The room fell silent except for Madison's nervous giggle and my mother's attempt to change the subject. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment, not because my business was small, but because my own family had set me up for that humiliation. They had presented my work as a quirky hobby rather than acknowledging the legitimate enterprise I was building. That night, I made a decision that would define the next 3 years of my life. I I stopped discussing my business at family dinners. I stopped asking for their input or approval. Most importantly, I stopped caring whether they understood what I was building. Their laughter had revealed something crucial about their character, and I decided to let my results speak for themselves. The winter of my sophomore year brought challenges that tested every ounce of determination I possessed. My jewelry business was growing steadily, but the demands of scaling up while maintaining full-time student status pushed me to my physical and emotional limits. I was sleeping 4 hours per night attending classes during the day and spending every evening photographing products, responding to customer messages, and packing orders in my tiny dorm room. My roommate Jessica had grown tired of the constant stream of packages and the desk space dominated by jewelry displays and shipping supplies. She started making pointed comments about needing our room to actually function as a living space rather than a warehouse. The tension was building toward an explosion that I knew was inevitable. Meanwhile, my parents continued their campaign of subtle undermining disguised as parental concern. What I discovered through my cousin Rachel, however, revealed that their disapproval was far more active and malicious than I had realized. Rachel called me on a Tuesday evening in February while I was photographing a new collection of sterling silver earrings. Her voice carried an uncomfortable tone that immediately put me on alert. "Kelsey, I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how you're going to take it," she began. "My mom mentioned that Aunt Carol called her last month asking her not to buy anything from your jewelry business." I stopped adjusting the lighting on my photography setup. "What do you mean?" "She said that buying from you would just encourage unrealistic expectations, and that the family needed to help you understand that online businesses aren't real careers. She asked my mom to discourage other relatives from purchasing anything too." The phone felt heavy in my hand as Rachel continued explaining that my mother had made similar calls to at least 6 other family members describing my business as an embarrassing phase that needed to run its course without family enablement. She had even suggested that purchasing from me would be throwing money away and preventing me from accepting reality. The betrayal cut deeper than any previous mockery because it was calculated and deliberate. My parents were not simply failing to support my business, they were actively sabotaging it by turning our extended family against me. They were weaponizing family relationships to ensure my failure, then planning to use that failure as proof that their skepticism had been justified all along. The emotional impact of this discovery coincided with a particularly challenging period in my business development. I was struggling to keep up with demand while maintaining quality standards, and the stress was affecting my academic performance. My grades had slipped from A's and B's to mostly C's and 1D in my statistics class. During this same period, Madison was thriving at Northwestern University, sending home photos of herself at networking events and internship interviews. Her social media posts showed a picture-perfect college experience, filled with study groups and beautiful libraries, coffee dates with accomplished friends, and weekend trips to Chicago cultural events. The contrast was deliberately highlighted every time I came home for Sunday dinners or holidays. Madison would arrive with perfectly coordinated outfits and stories about professors who were connections in major corporations, while I showed up exhausted and stressed with ink stains on my fingers from addressing shipping labels and dark circles under my eyes from late nights managing customer service. My parents seized on these visual differences as evidence supporting their narrative. They would comment on how refreshed and focused Madison looked compared to how tired and overwhelmed I appeared. They suggested that this proved Madison had chosen the right path while I was burning myself out chasing fantasies. "Honey, you're working yourself to death for what?" my mother would ask, genuinely puzzled. "Madison is building a real future with real credentials. You're just exhausting yourself with something that can't possibly provide the security and respect that comes with a proper education." The most painful aspect was their complete inability to recognize the skills I was developing or the knowledge I was gaining. While Madison was learning theory from textbooks, I was gaining practical experience in customer relations, supply chain, management, financial planning, and digital marketing. I was solving real problems for real customers and building systems that generated actual revenue. But in their eyes, because my classroom wasn't traditional and my curriculum wasn't accredited, my education was worthless. They could not comprehend that I was receiving a more comprehensive business education than most MBA programs provide, precisely because I was dealing with every aspect of running a company rather than studying hypothetical case studies. My business continued growing despite their sabotage efforts. By spring semester, I was earning consistently over $800 per week and had expanded my product line to include custom engagement jewelry and bridesmaid sets. But the isolation from family support and the constant pressure to defend my choices was wearing down my confidence and energy. The breaking point came during spring break when I discovered that my parents had scheduled a meeting with my academic advisor to discuss my concerning priorities and request that the college intervene in what they perceived as my academic decline due to business distractions. They had gone behind my back to involve school officials in their campaign to force me back into traditional academic focus. The advisor called me into her office the week after spring break to discuss my parents' concerns about my side business interfering with educational goals. Sitting in that sterile office listening to an academic advisor relay my parents' complaints about my business priorities, I realized that my family's lack of support had crossed every reasonable boundary. They were not content to simply withhold encouragement. They were actively working to destroy what I was building. That afternoon, I walked across campus to the financial aid office and requested information about student loans that would not require parental co-signature. It was time to make decisions about my future without factoring in their approval or support. The conversation that changed everything happened on a humid Thursday afternoon in May, 3 days before final exams. I had requested a family meeting to discuss my financial aid options for the upcoming year, specifically my need for their co-signature on student loans to continue my education. My parents sat across from me at our dining room table with expressions that told me they had already discussed this privately and reached their conclusion. My father's hands were folded in that particular way that meant he was about to deliver what he considered wise parental guidance, while my mother wore the tight smile she reserved for conversations where she planned to be unmovable. "Kelsey, we've been talking about your situation extensively." My father began removing his glasses to clean them slowly. "We cannot in good conscience co-sign additional student loans when you're clearly not prioritizing your education appropriately." The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire I had not seen coming. I had expected resistance or conditions, but not complete refusal. "Your grades have declined significantly while you've been distracted by this jewelry hobby," my mother added. "We would be doing you a disservice by enabling choices that are obviously not working." I felt my throat tighten as the implications became clear. Without their co-signature, I could not afford to continue college. My savings from the business covered my living expenses and business reinvestment, but tuition and fees required loan amounts that exceeded what I could qualify for independently. "This isn't about punishment," my father continued. "This is about helping you understand that real life requires real commitments. Madison has maintained excellent grades while building meaningful career connections. You need to follow her example and focus on achievable goals." The comparison to Madison was inevitable, but it still stung. What they refused to acknowledge was that my business was generating more income than most college graduates earn in their first year after graduation. I was already achieving financial independence, while Madison remained completely dependent on their support. "You need to get a real job and demonstrate that you can handle traditional responsibilities before we invest more money in your education," my mother said. "Maybe a year of working retail or food service will help you appreciate the value of a college degree." They genuinely believed they were providing tough love that would redirect my life toward conventional success. In their minds, forcing me to abandon my business and take a minimum wage job would teach me humility and practicality that would ultimately benefit my character development. What they had actually done was force a decision I had been avoiding for months. I could either abandon my business to meet their expectations and take on debt for a degree in a field I had no passion for, or I could commit completely to the path I had been building and prove to myself and everyone else that their skepticism was unfounded. "I understand your position," I said carefully, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I disagree with your assessment, but I understand it." My father nodded with satisfaction, interpreting my calm response as acceptance of their wisdom. "We knew you would see reason eventually. There are several retail positions available downtown, and you could start immediately after your semester ends. Actually," I continued, "I won't be needing those job suggestions. I'm withdrawing from college to focus on my business full time." The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen and a lawnmower running somewhere in the neighborhood. My parents stared at me with expressions shifting from confusion to alarm to anger. "Absolutely not," my mother said sharply. "That is exactly the kind of unrealistic thinking we're trying to prevent." "You're not thinking clearly," my father added. "You cannot support yourself with an internet hobby. This is precisely why we cannot enable these delusions." But their refusal to co-sign the loans had already made the decision for me. I could either spend the next 3 years accumulating massive debt while pursuing a degree in a field that held no interest for me, or I could use that same 3 years to build something meaningful that was already generating income. "My delusions," I said, standing up from the table, "are currently earning more per month than your bookstore. Maybe it's time you examined whose thinking needs adjustment." I walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom and began planning my transition to complete independence. Within 2 weeks, I had found a studio apartment 15 minutes from campus, negotiated payment terms that fit my budget, and begun the process of moving my entire business operation to a space where I would have complete control over my time and priorities. My parents' reaction to this decision was a mixture of anger, disappointment, and secret relief that they interpreted as validation. They told relatives and family friends that I had finally come to my senses about college being too challenging, while simultaneously maintaining that my business venture would collapse within months, forcing me to return and ask for their help. Madison called me the night before I moved out, ostensibly to express concern, but actually to deliver a carefully rehearsed speech about the importance of family support and conventional wisdom. "Kelsey, I think you're making a huge mistake," she said in her practiced older sister voice. "Mom and Dad have more life experience than us, and they're trying to protect you from making choices you'll regret." "Madison," I replied, loading boxes of inventory into my car, "when your life experience includes building a profitable business from scratch, I'll consider your advice about business decisions." That conversation marked the end of my attempts to maintain family harmony at the expense of my own growth. I was 20 years old, financially independent, and ready to discover exactly how far my determination could take me. 6 months into my new life as a full-time entrepreneur, I had established routines that maximized productivity while maintaining my sanity. My studio apartment had been transformed into an efficient workspace with designated areas for photography inventory, storage, and order fulfillment. Sales had increased by 40% since I could devote full attention to customer service and product development without academic distractions. The isolation from my family had been painful initially, but it had also been liberating. I no longer had to defend every business decision or justify my unconventional path. My success spoke for itself in the form of consistent revenue growth and an expanding customer base that included repeat buyers and referrals from satisfied clients. It was during this period of independence that Madison surprised me with an unexpected phone call on a rainy Tuesday evening in November. Her voice carried a tone I had not heard before, softer and more uncertain than her usual confident delivery. "Kelsey, I've been thinking about our conversation when you moved out," she began. I realize I may have been too quick to dismiss what you're building. I paused in my inventory organization, suspicious of this sudden change in her perspective. What do you mean? I've been watching your social media posts about your business, and honestly, I'm impressed by how professional everything looks. Your product photography is really sophisticated, and your customer reviews are incredible. The acknowledgement felt genuine, and I found myself cautiously hopeful that perhaps my sister was beginning to understand what I had been working toward. We talked for over an hour about my business model, my target market, and my plans for expansion. Madison asked detailed questions about my profit margins, my supplier relationships, and my marketing strategies. Her business education allowed her to understand the financial aspects of what I was building in ways that our parents could not grasp. For the first time in years, I felt like I was talking to someone who recognized my work as legitimate business rather than hobby. "I have a proposition for you," Madison said as our conversation was winding down. "I've saved $5,000 from my summer internship, and I'd like to invest it in your business." The offer was completely unexpected and emotionally overwhelming. After months of family rejection and skepticism, my sister was offering financial support and partnership. She explained that she believed my business had real growth potential and that she wanted to be part of that success. "I know I was dismissive before, but I was looking at your business through the lens of what Mom and Dad were saying, rather than evaluating it objectively," she admitted. "You've built something real, and I want to help you take it to the next level." We spent the following 2 weeks negotiating the terms of her investment. Madison would provide $5,000 in exchange for detailed financial reports and input on major business decisions. She also requested access to my product development plans and marketing strategies so she could offer suggestions based on her finance education. The arrangement felt like a new beginning for our relationship. Madison would visit my apartment to review business reports and offer strategic advice. She helped me develop more sophisticated financial tracking systems and suggested ways to optimize my tax planning. Having someone in my family finally recognize and support my work felt like validation I had not realized I desperately needed. In December, I shared my complete product line with Madison, including designs I had been developing for a spring launch of higher-end jewelry pieces. These designs represented months of research and development, incorporating unique techniques and premium materials that would differentiate my brand in the luxury market. Madison was particularly enthusiastic about a collection of hand-forged silver pendants with semi-precious stones that I had been perfecting. She suggested refinements to the packaging and helped me develop marketing copy that emphasized the artisanal craftsmanship and exclusive nature of the pieces. These designs could really set you apart from other online jewelry sellers, she said, photographing the pieces from multiple angles. "The quality is definitely boutique level, and the price point is perfect for gift buyers." I felt proud and grateful to finally have family support for something I had been building in isolation. Madison's enthusiasm seemed genuine, and her business insights were actually helpful in ways I had not anticipated. That feeling lasted exactly 6 weeks. In late January, one of my regular customers sent me a message with a link to another online jewelry retailer's website. "I thought you should see this," the message read. "Someone is selling pieces that look exactly like your designs." The link led to a boutique online store called Silver Moon Creations, featuring an entire collection that was unmistakably based on my exclusive spring designs. Not similar to my work, but identical in every significant detail, from the wire wrapping techniques to the specific stone settings and even the proportions and finishing methods. My hands shook as I scrolled through page after page of my intellectual property being sold by someone else. The photography was professional, the pricing was competitive, and the marketing copy emphasized the same artisanal qualities and exclusive craftsmanship that I had developed for my own launch. A simple internet search revealed that Silver Moon Creations was owned by Trendcraft Wholesale, a company that specialized in providing designs to multiple online retailers simultaneously. They had taken my exclusive designs and mass-produced them for distribution across dozens of websites, destroying any possibility of my spring collection having the unique market position I had worked months to create. The betrayal was devastating enough, but the mystery of how Trendcraft had obtained my designs was solved with a single phone call. When I contacted their customer service department posing as a potential retailer, the representative was happy to explain that their newest designs had been purchased from an individual seller who needed quick cash for graduate school applications. Madison had sold my intellectual property for $15,000, claiming she needed money for law school applications and LSAT preparation courses. She had violated every aspect of our partnership agreement and destroyed months of product development work for personal profit. When I confronted her that evening, she was defensive rather than apologetic. "You're being dramatic about this," she said, crossing her arms. "Business is business, and I saw an opportunity to make money from designs that were just sitting unused. Those designs were the foundation of my spring launch." I replied, struggling to control my voice. "You destroyed months of work and stole my competitive advantage." "Look, you'll come up with other designs," Madison shrugged. "You're creative. But I needed that money for my future, and those designs weren't generating income just sitting in your apartment." The casual dismissal of my work and the complete absence of guilt or remorse showed me exactly who my sister really was. She had never believed in my business or respected my work. She'd seen an opportunity to exploit my trust and had taken it without considering the consequences for me or my livelihood. That night, I realized that my family's lack of support was not just about misunderstanding my choices. It was about fundamental differences in character and values that could not be bridged by success or time or explanation. They had shown me who they were, and I finally believed them. The betrayal from Madison hit me harder than I had anticipated, not just emotionally, but physically. For weeks after discovering her theft of my designs, I threw myself into redesigning my entire spring collection with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I was determined to prove that her sabotage could not destroy what I was building, but my body was keeping score of the stress in ways I refused to acknowledge. I was working 20-hour days, surviving on coffee and whatever packaged food I could grab between tasks. Sleep became something that happened accidentally when I collapsed over my workbench rather than something I planned or prioritized. My studio apartment had become a pressure cooker of deadlines and determination with no space for rest or recovery. The craft fair season was beginning, and I had committed to 6 weekend events between February and April. These fairs were crucial for building brand recognition and generating the cash flow needed to fund my redesigned product line. Each fair required not only having inventory ready, but also transporting displays, managing sales throughout the weekend, and networking with potential wholesale clients. It was during the third weekend fair, a busy Saturday afternoon in March at the downtown convention center, that my body finally rebelled against the schedule I had been maintaining. I was in the middle of explaining the craftsmanship details of a custom bracelet to a potential customer when the room started spinning. The sensation began subtly, like the feeling of standing up too quickly, but it escalated rapidly until I could not distinguish between the ceiling and the floor. The customer's voice became distant and muffled, as if she were speaking from underwater. My vision narrowed to a small tunnel of clarity, surrounded by encroaching darkness. The next thing I remembered was waking up on a stretcher in the back of an ambulance with a paramedic asking me questions about my medical history and current medications. The craft fair had transformed into a medical emergency, and concerned vendors had called 911 when I collapsed unconscious behind my display table. At the emergency room, the initial tests revealed what months of poor self-care had done to my body. My blood pressure was dangerously low, my heart rate was irregular, and my blood work showed severe anemia and multiple nutritional deficiencies. The doctor explained that I was essentially operating on empty reserves while demanding maximum performance from systems that had no fuel. "When was the last time you had a complete meal?" Dr. Martinez asked, reviewing my test results with concern. Your body is showing signs of chronic malnutrition and exhaustion. I tried to remember the last time I had eaten something more substantial than granola bars and instant coffee, but the past several weeks had blended together into a blur of work and worry. Food had become an inconvenience that interrupted productivity rather than fuel that enabled it. "Young lady, you are severely anemic and dehydrated," Dr. Martinez continued. "Your iron levels are so low that we need to start immediate treatment, and your overall nutritional state suggests you have been neglecting basic self-care for an extended period." The medical bills from the emergency room visit and the follow-up testing wiped out most of the money I had saved for spring inventory purchases. The irony was brutal. My determination to overcome Madison's sabotage had led to health problems that created financial problems that threatened the very business I was trying to protect. My parents learned about my hospitalization from my emergency contact information, and their visit the following day was exactly as supportive as I had expected. They arrived during afternoon visiting hours wearing expressions that mixed concern with vindication, as if my collapse proved everything they had been saying about my lifestyle choices. "Honey, this is what happens when you push yourself beyond reasonable limits," my mother said, settling into the uncomfortable hospital chair with her purse clutched tightly in her lap. "Your body is telling you what we have been trying to explain for months." My father stood at the foot of my hospital bed, hands clasped behind his back in his familiar lecture position. "This business has become an obsession that is clearly damaging your health and your future. Maybe now you can see that we were trying to protect you from exactly this kind of situation." They spent 30 minutes explaining how my hospitalization proved their point about the dangers of entrepreneurship and the wisdom of conventional career paths. Not once did they ask about my recovery or offer assistance with the medical expenses or express simple concern for my well-being. Instead, they used my vulnerability as an opportunity to reinforce their narrative about my poor judgment. "Madison is thriving in her graduate program while you are lying in a hospital bed because you refuse to listen to sensible advice," my mother said. "Perhaps this experience will help you understand that parents sometimes know better than their children about life choices." The mention of Madison was particularly cruel given that my current situation was partly the result of her theft and the extra work required to recover from her betrayal. But my parents had no knowledge of what had happened between Madison and me, and I was too exhausted to explain the complexity of my circumstances. After they left, I lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling and processing the reality of my situation. My business was growing successfully, but I had nearly destroyed my health in the process. My family viewed my hospitalization as evidence supporting their skepticism rather than motivation to offer support during a difficult period. The medical bills would drain my business reserves and delay my product development timeline by months. I was facing the possibility that Madison's sabotage combined with my health crisis might actually accomplish what my family's discouragement had failed to achieve. That evening, I received a text message from Madison that simply read, "Hope you feel better soon. Maybe now you will be realistic about your future." No acknowledgement of her role in creating the stress that had contributed to my collapse. No apology for the theft that had forced me to work impossible hours to recover my position. Just another opportunity to suggest that my problems proved her superior wisdom. Lying alone in that sterile hospital room connected to IV fluids that were slowly restoring my depleted system, I faced the possibility that maybe everyone else was right. Maybe I had been foolishly stubborn about pursuing something that was ultimately unsustainable. Maybe the smart choice was to admit defeat and find a conventional job that would not require risking my health and financial security. But somewhere beneath the exhaustion and discouragement, a small flame of determination continued burning. This setback was significant, but it was not the end of my story unless I chose to make it the ending. Recovery in the hospital took longer than expected due to the severity of my nutritional deficiencies, and I was assigned to a semi-private room for extended observation and treatment. My roommate was a woman in her 70s named Eleanor Peterson, who had been admitted for a planned surgery on her knee replacement that had developed complications. Eleanor was unlike anyone I had ever encountered. Despite being confined to bed rest, she maintained an air of quiet authority and carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to making important decisions. Her visitors were not typical family members bringing flowers and magazines, but serious-looking individuals in expensive suits who spoke in hushed tones about market conditions and investment opportunities. Initially, I assumed Eleanor was simply a wealthy retiree with financial advisors managing her portfolio. But as I observed her phone conversations and interactions with visitors over several days, it became clear that she was far more than a passive investor, receiving updates about her accounts. "Marcus, the semiconductor projections are too conservative," she said during one call, speaking with the authority of someone who understood technology markets at a granular level. "Increase the allocation by 15% and reduce the utility position accordingly." When she was not managing financial matters, Eleanor was surprisingly observant about my own situation. She had noticed me working on my laptop despite being hospitalized and had seen the jewelry samples that friends had brought from my apartment, along with other personal items. "You run a business," she said on my third day in the room, not asking, but stating it as an observed fact. I replied, uncertain how much to share with a stranger about my circumstances. "I have been watching you manage customer service emails and inventory issues from a hospital bed while recovering from exhaustion," Eleanor continued. "That suggests either poor business planning or exceptional dedication." Her directness was refreshing after months of dealing with family members who spoke in circles around their real opinions. I found myself explaining my business model, my recent challenges, and the health crisis that had landed me in the hospital. Eleanor listened without interrupting, asking occasional clarifying questions that demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of business operations and market dynamics. When I finished describing my situation, she was quiet for several minutes before responding. "You have been approaching this backwards," she said finally. "You are working in your business instead of working on your business. That is why you nearly killed yourself trying to maintain growth." Over the following days, Eleanor began sharing insights about business development that I had never encountered in any of the entrepreneurship resources I had studied. She explained systems thinking, scalability principles, and the critical difference between being self-employed and building an enterprise that could operate independently. "Every successful business reaches a point where the founder becomes the bottleneck," she explained. "Your job is to identify that point before you reach it and build systems that allow growth without proportional increases in your personal workload." Eleanor's advice was practical and specific rather than theoretical. She helped me analyze my business operations and identify the tasks that required my personal attention versus those that could be systematized or delegated. She also introduced concepts about customer lifetime value, market positioning, and competitive advantage that transformed how I thought about my business strategy. On my 5th day in the hospital, Eleanor revealed information that recontextualized everything about our conversations. During visiting hours, a woman arrived who was introduced as Eleanor's business partner rather than family member. Their discussion centered around the final details of selling Eleanor's third technology company for a sum that exceeded $50 million. "You built and sold 3 companies," I asked after her visitor left. "Built and sold 2 built, and am currently selling the third," Eleanor corrected. "I started the first one in 1978 when women were not generally welcome in technology entrepreneurship. Each company taught me something different about scaling businesses and managing growth." The woman I had assumed was a retired investor was actually a serial entrepreneur with decades of experience building companies, from startup through acquisition. She had been observing my business challenges through the lens of someone who had navigated similar obstacles and achieved the kind of success I could barely imagine. "Why are you sharing this with me?" I asked, overwhelmed by the generosity of her mentorship. "Because you remind me of myself 40 years ago," Eleanor replied. "Determined, capable, and making every mistake possible because nobody taught you how to think strategically about business development. That afternoon, Eleanor made an observation that changed my perspective on Madison's betrayal and my family's skepticism. She'd been listening to my phone conversations with customers and had noticed something I had been too emotionally involved to recognize. "Your sister did you a favor by stealing those designs?" she said, looking up from the financial newspaper she was reading. "How is theft a favor?" I asked, confused by her assessment. "Because it forced you to develop new products instead of relying on designs you created months ago. Innovation should be continuous, not intermittent. If those designs had been successful, you might have become complacent about product development." Eleanor also pointed out that Madison's theft had revealed critical weaknesses in my business security and intellectual property protection that needed to be addressed regardless. Better to learn about those vulnerabilities from a sister's betrayal than from a competitor's lawsuit, she said pragmatically. Over the remaining days of our hospital stay, Eleanor began introducing me to concepts and connections that would fundamentally change my business trajectory. But first, she said I needed to learn how to take care of myself as well as I took care of my customers. "Entrepreneurship is a marathon, not a sprint," Eleanor explained. "If you destroy your health pursuing success, you will have neither success nor health." Eleanor's discharge from the hospital came 2 days before mine, but she left me with something more valuable than any business advice she had shared during our time as roommates. She gave me her personal phone number and an invitation to call her when I was ready to have serious conversations about scaling my business properly. "Recovery first, then strategy," she said as the hospital transport team prepared to wheel her to discharge. "But when you are ready to think bigger than craft fairs and individual sales, we should talk." 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, I had established new routines that prioritized my health alongside my business goals. I was eating regular meals, sleeping 8 hours per night, and taking daily walks that helped clear my mind and process the strategic insights Eleanor had shared. When I finally called Eleanor, she invited me to visit her home office for what she described as a proper business consultation. Her house was a modest suburban ranch that revealed no external signs of her extraordinary success, but her home office was equipped with technology and resources that rivaled corporate conference rooms. "Before we discuss your business, I need to understand your actual goals," Eleanor said, settling behind a desk that faced multiple monitors displaying real-time financial data. "Are you trying to make a living, build wealth, or create something that outlasts you?" The question forced me to examine motivations I had never articulated clearly. I had been focused on proving my family wrong and maintaining financial independence, but I had not considered what success, beyond those goals, might look like. "I want to build something significant," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "Not just a job that I created for myself, but a business that creates value for other people and could eventually operate without my constant involvement." Eleanor smiled with approval. "Then we can work with that. But first, you need to understand why your current approach will never achieve those goals." She spent the next 2 hours analyzing my business model with the precision of a surgeon examining a patient. Every aspect of my operations was dissected, evaluated, and either approved or marked for reconstruction. The assessment was both encouraging and overwhelming. "Your product quality is exceptional, your customer service is outstanding, and your brand reputation is solid," Eleanor summarized. "But your supply chain is inefficient, your pricing strategy undervalues your work, and your growth model requires linear increases in your time investment." The solution, according to Eleanor, was to completely reimagine my relationship with suppliers, customers, and the market itself. Instead of creating individual pieces and selling them through craft fairs and social media, I needed to think like a luxury brand with exclusive products and premium positioning. "Your work is artisan quality, but you are pricing and marketing it as hobby crafts," Eleanor explained. "The customers who value true craftsmanship will pay significantly more for pieces they cannot find elsewhere, but they need to understand why your work is worth the premium." Eleanor had connections throughout the fashion and luxury goods industries, accumulated over decades of building technology companies that served those markets. She offered to introduce me to suppliers who provided materials exclusively to high-end designers, opening access to gemstones, metals, and findings that were not available through conventional wholesale channels. These suppliers require minimum orders and established relationships, Eleanor explained, but they provide materials that immediately differentiate your products from anything available through normal retail channels. The transformation began with a complete overhaul of my supply relationships. Eleanor introduced me to a gemstone dealer in New York who specialized in ethically sourced stones for luxury designers. The minimum order required a significant investment, but the quality difference was immediately apparent in both the materials themselves and the finished pieces they enabled. She also connected me with a metals supplier who provided recycled precious metals certified for fine jewelry applications. Working with genuine sterling silver and gold-filled wire elevated both the quality and the perceived value of my designs in ways that justified premium pricing. Now you are working with materials that match your skill level, Eleanor said, examining the first pieces I created with the new supplies. These are no longer craft fair products. These are boutique luxury items. The marketing transformation was equally dramatic. Eleanor introduced me to a brand consultant who had worked with emerging luxury companies, helping them develop positioning strategies that commanded premium pricing. We redesigned everything from my product photography to my packaging to reinforce the exclusive artisan positioning. Luxury customers buy stories as much as products, the consultant explained. They need to understand not just what they are purchasing, but why it is special and how it reflects their own taste and values. My new marketing emphasized the ethical sourcing of materials, the traditional techniques used in crafting each piece, and the limited availability that made each item genuinely exclusive. Instead of competing on price, I was now competing on uniqueness and quality. The financial results were immediate and dramatic. Pieces that I had previously sold for $30 to $50 were now priced at $100 to $200 and selling consistently to customers who appreciated the quality difference. My profit margins increased significantly while my time investment per piece remained constant. Eleanor also introduced me to a marketing specialist who helped optimize my online presence for luxury customers rather than bargain hunters. We rebuilt my website, refined my social media strategy, and developed email marketing campaigns that emphasized exclusivity and craftsmanship. You have been attracting customers who want good jewelry at low prices, the specialist explained. Now you want customers who want exceptional jewelry regardless of price. Within 6 weeks of implementing Eleanor's strategic recommendations, my monthly revenue had doubled while my workload had actually decreased. I was creating fewer pieces but earning more from each sale while building a customer base that valued exclusivity over affordability. But Eleanor had not revealed the most significant aspect of her support. During our 8th week of working together, she mentioned casually that she had been documenting my progress for reasons beyond simple mentorship interest. I should tell you that I am not just helping you as a favor, she said during one of our weekly strategy sessions. I have been evaluating your business as a potential investment opportunity for my firm. The revelation recontextualized everything about our relationship and opened possibilities I had never considered. Eleanor was not just sharing advice. She was conducting due diligence on a company she was considering for acquisition or investment. The transformation Eleanor had orchestrated in my business operations created momentum that exceeded every projection we had developed during our strategic planning sessions. By late spring, I was consistently selling out of inventory within days of posting new collections, and my customer waiting list had grown to over 200 people requesting notification when specific items became available. The supply chain improvements Eleanor had facilitated allowed me to create pieces that were genuinely unique in the online marketplace. The ethically sourced gemstones and premium materials elevated my work into a category that had very few direct competitors, especially at my price points. But the event that transformed my business from successful to extraordinary happened completely by accident during the first week of June. Eleanor's network included connections throughout the entertainment industry developed during her years building technology companies that served media and production companies. One of those connections was a stylist named Patricia, who worked with A-list celebrities for red carpet events and public appearances. Patricia had purchased several pieces from my collection for her personal jewelry wardrobe and had been impressed enough to recommend my work to colleagues who styled other high-profile clients. But I had no knowledge of these behind-the-scenes recommendations or their potential impact. I was managing routine customer service emails on a Tuesday morning when I received a message that initially appeared to be spam or a scam attempt. The subject line read, "Urgent styling request for premiere event," and the sender identified herself as representing a major Hollywood talent agency. "Ms. Henderson, we need to source a unique silver pendant for a client attending a premiere tomorrow evening. Your work was recommended by Patricia Chen, and we are prepared to pay premium rush fees for overnight delivery of an appropriate piece." My first instinct was to delete the message as an obvious fake, but something about the professional tone and specific details prompted me to research the sender. The email address was legitimate. The agency was real, and Patricia Chen was indeed a recognized stylist in the entertainment industry. I called the number provided in the message and spoke directly with the stylist's assistant, who explained that their client had fallen in love with one of my pendants in Patricia's personal collection and wanted something similar for a high-profile public appearance. "The client needs something elegant but distinctive," the assistant explained. "Understated luxury that will photograph well but not compete with the designer gown. Your craftsmanship is exactly what we are looking for." I had a pendant that met their specifications perfectly, a hand-forged silver piece with a natural moonstone that caught light beautifully without being ostentatious. The piece was originally priced at $180, but they offered $400 for overnight delivery and exclusive first-wear rights. I shipped the pendant via Overnight Express and forgot about the transaction until Thursday morning, when my phone started receiving notifications from social media platforms faster than I could process them. My business Instagram account was gaining followers by the hundreds, my website traffic had increased by over 1,000%, and my email inbox was flooded with purchase requests. The pendant I had shipped had been worn by Emma Stone to the premiere of her latest film. The photographers had captured multiple clear images of the piece, and celebrity fashion bloggers had spent considerable effort identifying the designer and source of what they described as a stunning example of artisan craftsmanship. Within 24 hours, my website had crashed from traffic volume, my entire available inventory had been purchased, and I had received over 300 requests for custom pieces similar to the one Emma Stone had worn. The exposure from a single red carpet appearance had created demand that exceeded my entire production capacity. Eleanor called me that afternoon, having heard about the development through her industry connections, before I had fully processed what was happening. "This is exactly the kind of breakthrough that can transform a business," she said, "but only if you handle it correctly. You need to scale up immediately without compromising quality or disappointing customers." The challenge was enormous. My entire business operation had been designed around creating small batches of pieces for a limited customer base. Now I was facing demand that required production increases of several 100% while maintaining the handcrafted quality that had attracted the attention in the first place. Eleanor's solution involved temporarily hiring additional artisans who could work under my supervision to maintain quality standards while increasing production volume. She connected me with a jewelry studio that specialized in supporting independent designers during high-demand periods. "You cannot fulfill all of this demand personally," Eleanor explained, "but you can oversee production and quality control while teaching other skilled craftspeople to execute your designs." We also implemented a pre-order system that allowed customers to purchase pieces with delivery timelines that matched realistic production schedules. Instead of trying to fulfill immediate demand and disappointing customers with delays, we set clear expectations about when orders would be completed and shipped. The financial impact was staggering. Within 2 weeks of the Emma Stone appearance, my business had generated more revenue than the previous 6 months combined. I was processing orders for custom engagement sets, bridal party jewelry, and exclusive pieces for customers who specifically wanted Emma Stone-style designs. But the most significant long-term impact was the elevation of my brand reputation and market positioning. I was no longer competing with hobby craft sellers or mass-produced jewelry retailers. My work was now associated with celebrity style and red carpet fashion, which justified premium pricing and exclusive marketing approaches. The irony was not lost on me that Madison's theft of my original designs had forced me to develop the new techniques and premium materials that had attracted Patricia's attention in the first place. Her betrayal had inadvertently pushed me toward innovations that created the foundation for this breakthrough success. My parents remained completely unaware of these developments. I had maintained my policy of not discussing my business with family members, and they continued to assume I was struggling financially while pursuing unrealistic goals. Their ignorance would soon become a problem, but for now it allowed me to focus on managing growth without dealing with their skepticism or demands for explanations. The rapid expansion of my business following the Emma Stone exposure required implementing security measures I had never considered necessary when operating as a small craft business. Eleanor insisted that protecting my designs' customer data and business strategies was essential as my company grew in value and visibility. Success attracts attention from competitors and opportunists, Eleanor warned. You need systems that protect your intellectual property and business intelligence before you become a target. We implemented digital security protocols that included encrypted file storage, secure communication channels, and monitoring systems that tracked access to sensitive business information. Eleanor's technology background made her particularly knowledgeable about cybersecurity threats and prevention methods. It was through these new monitoring systems that we discovered something disturbing in late July. Someone with inside knowledge of my business was systematically accessing and copying confidential information, including customer databases, supplier contacts, financial reports, and upcoming product designs. The digital forensics revealed that the unauthorized access was coming from multiple locations, but using login credentials that belonged to family members who had been given limited access to my systems for emergency purposes. The investigation showed a pattern of data theft that had been ongoing for several months. Eleanor brought in a cybersecurity specialist who traced the unauthorized access to its source with precision that shocked me. The stolen information was being forwarded to email addresses registered to Madison, and surprisingly to my parents' failing bookstore business. Your family has been conducting systematic corporate espionage against your company, the specialist explained, showing me detailed logs of their access patterns and data theft activities. They have been copying your customer lists, marketing strategies, financial information, and product designs. The betrayal was more comprehensive and calculated than I had imagined possible. Madison had not simply stolen designs once for quick profit. She had been stealing information continuously and sharing it with our parents who were using my business intelligence to attempt their own online ventures. Further investigation revealed that Henderson Books had quietly launched an e-commerce division that was copying my marketing language, targeting my customers directly, and attempting to replicate my supplier relationships. They were using my customer database to send promotional emails for their own products while undermining my business through price competition and design imitation. Your parents have been using your business model as a blueprint for their own online expansion, the cybersecurity specialist continued. They have been systematically copying every successful strategy you developed while maintaining the public position that your business is worthless. The hypocrisy was staggering. The same parents who had refused to co-sign student loans because my business was unrealistic had been secretly stealing my business methods to save their failing store. They had been using my success to fund their own survival while publicly dismissing my work as impractical. Madison's role was equally duplicitous. While maintaining the pretense of pursuing law school, she'd been operating as a corporate spy within my business, providing our parents with inside information that they used to compete against me directly. The legal implications were serious enough that Eleanor recommended involving attorneys who specialized in corporate espionage and intellectual property theft. The evidence was comprehensive and clearly documented, providing grounds for both civil litigation and criminal charges. "This goes beyond family conflict," Eleanor said grimly. "This is criminal activity that has cost your business significant money and competitive advantage. You cannot ignore it or handle it privately." But before pursuing legal action, I decided to conduct my own investigation into the extent of their duplicity. Using the monitoring systems we had implemented, I discovered communications between Madison and my parents that revealed the full scope of their conspiracy. They had been coordinating their efforts for months, with Madison providing detailed reports about my business operations, financial performance, and strategic plans. My parents had been using this information to anticipate my business decisions and attempt to undercut my market position. Most disturbing was a series of emails discussing their long-term plan to drive my business into bankruptcy, while using my innovations to establish their own profitable online presence. They genuinely believed that forcing me to fail would prove their superior wisdom while enriching themselves through theft of my intellectual property. Once Kelsey admits this was a mistake and gets a real job, we will have an established online business built on proven methods, my father had written to Madison. She will have learned a valuable lesson about realistic expectations, and we will have secured our retirement income. The emails revealed that they viewed my business success as a threat to their narrative about conventional career wisdom and family hierarchy. Rather than celebrating my achievements, they were actively working to destroy them while profiting from my innovations. Eleanor's assessment of the situation was characteristically direct. "Your family is not simply unsupportive. They are criminal competitors who are using family relationships to steal from you." The monitoring systems had captured enough evidence to pursue serious legal action, but they had also revealed something else. My business was valuable enough that my own family was willing to commit crimes to steal from it. Their theft proved what their skepticism had always denied: I had built something significant enough to risk their freedom attempting to steal. Their betrayal was painful, but it was also validation. They had secretly acknowledged the value of my work through their actions while publicly denying it through their words. The same business they called unrealistic was profitable enough that they had dedicated months to stealing from it. As I reviewed the evidence of their systematic theft, I realized that my upcoming confrontation with them would not be about proving my business was legitimate. That question had been settled by their own criminal behavior. The confrontation would be about justice and consequences for people who had betrayed family relationships for financial gain. The evidence of systematic corporate espionage by my own family members was so comprehensive that Eleanor's legal team described it as one of the most well-documented cases of business theft they had encountered. The digital forensics had captured not only the unauthorized access and data theft, but also the communications between Madison and my parents that proved premeditation and conspiracy. "They have essentially confessed to multiple felonies in writing," explained Jennifer Walsh, the intellectual property attorney Eleanor had recommended. "The email communications discussing their plan to drive your business into bankruptcy while stealing your methods constitute criminal conspiracy in addition to the theft charges." The legal process moved quickly once we filed the necessary paperwork. Madison's theft of my original designs, combined with the ongoing data theft and industrial espionage, provided grounds for both criminal charges and civil litigation seeking substantial financial damages. Within 2 weeks, Madison received official notification that she was under investigation for industrial espionage, intellectual property theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. My parents received similar notifications regarding their use of stolen business intelligence and their unauthorized access to my computer systems. The shock of facing criminal charges prompted immediate attempts at reconciliation that were transparently motivated by fear rather than genuine remorse. Madison called me repeatedly, alternating between tearful apologies and angry accusations that I was overreacting to normal family business discussions. "You cannot seriously be pressing criminal charges against your own sister," she said during one particularly emotional call. "This is just business competition. Families work through these things privately." But the evidence revealed that this was far beyond normal business competition or family disagreement. They had committed serious crimes over an extended period while maintaining the pretense of family relationships. Their theft had cost my business significant revenue and competitive advantage during critical growth phases. My parents' response was equally predictable. They scheduled a meeting requesting that I drop all legal action in exchange for a family reconciliation and their promise to cease their competing business activities. They seemed genuinely shocked that I was treating their theft as a legal matter rather than a family conflict. "Honey, we are your parents," my mother said during our tense meeting at Jennifer's law office. "Surely we can work this out without involving courts and lawyers. This is getting out of hand. You stole hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of intellectual property and business intelligence," I replied, maintaining my composure despite their attempts to manipulate my emotions. "That is not a family disagreement. That is criminal activity." The civil litigation proceeded in parallel with the criminal investigation, and the financial settlement negotiations revealed just how valuable my business had become. The damages calculations included not only the direct theft of designs and customer data, but also the lost revenue from their competitive interference and the costs of implementing security measures to prevent future theft. But during these legal proceedings, Eleanor revealed information that recontextualized everything about our relationship and the future possibilities for my business. We were meeting in her office to review the latest settlement offers when she presented me with a formal business proposal. "I need to disclose something that may surprise you." Eleanor began producing a leather portfolio that contained official documents from her investment firm. "I have not been helping you simply as a mentor or friend. I have been conducting due diligence on your company as a potential acquisition target." The portfolio contained a comprehensive analysis of my business operations market position, growth potential, and financial performance that demonstrated months of professional evaluation. Eleanor's firm specialized in identifying and acquiring promising companies in emerging markets, particularly businesses founded by women entrepreneurs. "Your company represents exactly the kind of investment opportunity we seek," Eleanor continued. "Strong brand recognition, unique market position, scalable operations, and demonstrated growth potential under competent leadership." The acquisition offer was for $2.1 million, with me remaining as CEO and retaining operational control while gaining access to the resources and connections of Eleanor's investment network. The structure would provide immediate capital for expansion while maintaining the artisan quality and exclusive positioning that had driven my success. This acquisition would give you the financial resources to scale nationally while protecting you from the kind of family interference you have been dealing with, Eleanor explained. You would have professional board oversight instead of family drama affecting your business decisions. The timing was perfect given the legal settlements that were being negotiated. The acquisition would provide the financial independence to pursue justice against my family's theft without worrying about the costs of litigation or the impact on my business operations. After consulting with Jennifer and reviewing the terms carefully, I accepted Eleanor's acquisition offer. The transaction was structured to close immediately after the resolution of the legal cases, ensuring that my family's theft would not benefit them financially, while providing me with the resources to build something much larger than they had ever imagined possible. The criminal charges against Madison resulted in a plea agreement that included restitution payments, community service, and probation conditions that prohibited her from engaging in any business activities that competed with my company. She was also required to publicly acknowledge her theft and apologize for her actions. My parents' civil settlement required them to cease all online business activities, destroy any stolen intellectual property, and pay substantial financial damages for their corporate espionage. The settlement also included non-compete clauses that prevented them from entering the jewelry or online retail markets for 5 years. The resolution of the legal cases coincided with the closing of Eleanor's acquisition, making me a multimillionaire overnight, while ensuring that my family faced appropriate consequences for their criminal behavior. Justice had been served, and I now had the resources to build my business into something that would dwarf their wildest expectations. But the most satisfying aspect was not the financial success or legal victory. It was the validation that my instincts about family character had been correct all along. Their theft had revealed who they truly were, and the legal system had held them accountable for their actions. The acquisition by Eleanor's investment firm transformed my business operations in ways that went far beyond the financial injection of capital. I now had access to professional management consulting, advanced marketing resources, and distribution networks that could scale my brand nationally within months rather than years. But I maintained my policy of not discussing business developments with my family. As far as my parents and Madison knew, I was still struggling with the small online jewelry business they had been stealing from and attempting to undermine. Their ignorance of my actual circumstances would soon become the foundation for the most satisfying moment of vindication I could imagine. The opportunity arose in early November when I received an elegantly printed invitation to Madison's law school graduation party. She had completed an accelerated program and was celebrating both her graduation and her acceptance of a position with a prestigious downtown law firm. The invitation was addressed in my mother's familiar handwriting and included a handwritten note that attempted to restore family harmony after the legal settlements. "Kelsey, we hope you will join us in celebrating Madison's achievement. It is time for our family to move forward together." The timing was perfect for several reasons that my family could not have anticipated. The legal settlements had been finalized, the acquisition had been completed, and my business was now generating monthly revenues that exceeded their annual household income. Most importantly, Eleanor had become a trusted advisor, whose presence would add gravitas to any revelation I chose to make. But before accepting the invitation, I decided to conduct discreet research into my family's current financial situation. The information I discovered through public records and business filings revealed circumstances that made their graduation party even more ironic. Henderson Books had been declining rapidly since their failed attempt to compete in online markets, using my stolen business intelligence. Without access to my innovations and strategies, their e-commerce efforts had failed completely while generating significant debt from inventory investments and marketing expenses. The most revealing discovery was that my parents had taken a substantial second mortgage against their house to fund Madison's law school tuition and the elaborate graduation party they were planning. They had essentially bet their retirement security on Madison's legal career, while simultaneously facing the financial consequences of their failed business expansion. The graduation party represented not just celebration of Madison's achievement, but also a desperate attempt to maintain appearances while facing potential bankruptcy. They were risking their home to project success while their actual financial situation was deteriorating rapidly. I accepted the invitation with enthusiasm that my mother interpreted as family reconciliation, but which was actually anticipation of the perfect opportunity for revelation. The party would provide an ideal setting to demonstrate exactly how wrong their assessments of my business and my future had been. Eleanor agreed to attend the party as my guest, though I did not initially explain the full context of our relationship or the significance of the evening's potential revelations. I simply mentioned that I wanted her to meet my family and observe the dynamics that had shaped my entrepreneurial journey. "I am curious to meet the people who drove you to such extraordinary determination," Eleanor said when I extended the invitation. "It should be an educational evening." In the weeks leading up to the party, I prepared carefully for what I knew would be a defining moment in my family relationships. The bank statements showing my current account balance, the acquisition documents proving my business success, and Eleanor's presence as validation of my professional connections would combine to create an undeniable demonstration of everything my family had failed to recognize or support. But the most satisfying aspect would not be the shock value of revealing my success. It would be the opportunity to show them exactly what they could have been part of if they had chosen support over sabotage, encouragement over theft, and faith over skepticism. Madison's graduation party was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in my parents' backyard, the same space where years of family dinners had featured mockery of my business aspirations. The setting was symbolically perfect for demonstrating how completely their predictions about my future had been wrong. I spent the morning of the party preparing with the same attention to detail that I applied to product launches and business presentations. This would be the moment when years of family dynamics reached their inevitable conclusion, and I wanted to ensure that the impact was both dramatic and definitive. Eleanor arrived at my apartment 2 hours before the party, dressed in the understated elegance that marked successful business executives. Her presence alone would signal to anyone with business experience that I moved in circles my family had never imagined I could access. "Are you ready for this?" Eleanor asked as we prepared to leave for the party. "I have been ready for this moment for 3 years." I replied, checking my phone to confirm that my bank balance still showed the numbers that would change everything. They taught me exactly who they were. Now I am going to show them exactly who I became. The graduation party was everything I had expected, a carefully orchestrated display of conventional success designed to reinforce my parents' narrative about the superiority of traditional career paths over entrepreneurial pursuits. My mother had transformed their backyard into an elegant celebration space, with white tent rentals, catered food, and professional photography to document Madison's achievement. Madison looked radiant in her success, wearing a designer dress that my parents had obviously purchased for the occasion, despite their precarious financial situation. She moved through the crowd of relatives, family, friends, and law school classmates with the confidence of someone who had never doubted that her choices would be validated by conventional measures of achievement. The guest list included everyone who had witnessed years of family discussions about my business failures and Madison's academic excellence. Aunts and uncles who had received my mother's phone calls discouraging them from supporting my jewelry business were present to celebrate the family member who had chosen the approved path to success. Eleanor's arrival created immediate curiosity among the guests. Her presence was striking not because of ostentation, but because of the quiet authority she projected. Several guests approached me to ask about my distinguished companion, clearly recognizing that she represented a level of professional accomplishment rarely seen at family gatherings. "Kelsey, your friend seems very impressive," my Aunt Linda commented. "How did you meet such an accomplished woman?" "Eleanor has been mentoring me in business development," I replied truthfully, enjoying the confused expressions as relatives tried to reconcile my supposed business failures with my connection to someone of obvious professional stature. My parents were gracious hosts, but clearly uncomfortable with Eleanor's presence at their celebration of conventional success. They made polite conversation while obviously struggling to understand why someone of her caliber would be associated with their daughter's failed online jewelry hobby. The formal program began with my father's welcoming speech, praising Madison's dedication to her studies and her wise choice to pursue a stable, respected career in law. He spoke at length about the importance of realistic goals, practical education, and the security that comes from following proven paths to success. "Madison has always been our practical child," he said, smiling proudly at his daughter. She understood from an early age that success requires discipline, conventional education, and respect for established wisdom. The implicit comparison to my choices was clear to everyone present, though my father was tactful enough not to mention me directly during his praise of Madison's conventional wisdom and practical decision-making. Madison's response speech was where the evening took a turn that would make my eventual revelation even more dramatic. Instead of simply thanking the guests and accepting congratulations, she chose to use her moment in the spotlight to deliver what amounted to a public lecture about the importance of realistic career planning and conventional success metrics. "I want to thank everyone here tonight for supporting me through law school." Madison began holding a champagne glass and commanding the attention of the entire gathering. "But I also want to share some thoughts about the choices we make and the paths we choose in life." She proceeded to deliver a speech that was clearly directed at me, while pretending to offer general life advice to the younger people in attendance. The message was designed to publicly reinforce the family narrative about my poor judgment, while celebrating her superior wisdom and practical approach to career development. "I have watched too many people in my generation chase unrealistic dreams instead of building solid foundations for their futures." Madison continued, her voice carrying across the backyard with the confidence of someone accustomed to public speaking. "Social media and the internet have created dangerous illusions about easy success and instant wealth." The guests nodded along appreciatively as Madison explained the importance of traditional education, stable employment, and realistic expectations about financial security. She was delivering exactly the kind of conventional wisdom that her audience wanted to hear from a recent law school graduate. "I'm particularly grateful that I was raised in a family that taught me to value hard work over shortcuts and substance over appearances," she said, making eye contact with me briefly before continuing. "Too many young people today waste years pursuing internet fantasies instead of building real careers with real security." The applause that followed her speech was enthusiastic and prolonged. Madison had successfully positioned herself as the voice of wisdom and practical success, while implicitly criticizing anyone who had chosen unconventional paths. The guests clearly interpreted her remarks as validation of their own conservative approaches to career planning and financial security. My parents beamed with pride as relatives congratulated them on raising such a wise and accomplished daughter. Several guests made pointed comments about how refreshing it was to see a young person who understood the value of traditional success metrics instead of chasing internet business fantasies. "Madison really understands what matters in life," my Uncle Robert commented loudly enough for me to hear. "She is going to have a stable, successful career, while so many of her generation are wasting time on social media businesses that will never amount to anything." The evening had become a public celebration of everything my family believed about conventional success and a corresponding rejection of everything I had chosen to pursue. Madison's speech had been designed to humiliate me, while positioning herself as the example of superior judgment that others should emulate. But as I listened to the continued praise for Madison's wisdom and the subtle criticism of alternative approaches to success, I felt only calm anticipation. They had set the stage perfectly for a revelation that would be even more dramatic because of the stark contrast they had just established between conventional achievement and entrepreneurial failure. Eleanor had observed the entire evening with the analytical attention of someone evaluating family dynamics and business relationships. When the formal speeches concluded and guests began mixing socially again, she leaned over to speak quietly in my ear. "I understand now why you needed to become so self-reliant," she said. "This family has never recognized your actual capabilities or achievements. They're about to, I replied, reaching for my phone to check the bank balance one final time before sharing it with the people who had spent years explaining why my dreams were unrealistic. The moment I had been anticipating for 3 years arrived as the formal celebration was winding down, and guests were gathering in small groups around the backyard, digesting Madison's speech about the superiority of conventional career choices over internet business fantasies. I walked to the center of the space where Madison had delivered her lecture about realistic expectations and practical success. The positioning was deliberate. I wanted to speak from the same location where she had just finished explaining why my life choices represented everything intelligent people should avoid. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, raising my voice to capture the attention of the 50 or so guests who were still socializing and congratulating Madison on her achievement. "I hope you will allow me to add some thoughts to this celebration of success and practical career planning." My parents looked alarmed by my decision to speak publicly, clearly concerned that I might create an uncomfortable scene or say something that would embarrass the family during Madison's moment of triumph. Madison herself appeared curious but confident, probably assuming I was planning to acknowledge her achievements and perhaps apologize for my own poor choices. Madison gave an excellent speech about the importance of building real careers with real security. I continued making eye contact with relatives and family friends who had witnessed years of discussions about my misguided priorities. She emphasized the value of realistic expectations and practical approaches to financial planning. Several guests nodded approvingly, expecting me to concede that my sister's conventional wisdom had proven superior to my own stubborn pursuit of internet business dreams. I want to share with all of you exactly how realistic and practical my own career choices have proven to be, I said, reaching into my purse to retrieve my phone, because I think it is important that we base our judgments about success on actual results rather than theoretical assumptions. I opened my banking application and turned the phone screen toward the gathering, displaying the account balance that had reached $2.3 million following Eleanor's acquisition of my business. The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear birds singing in the neighbors' trees and traffic passing on the street beyond the backyard. Every conversation stopped as guests processed the number displayed on my phone screen and tried to reconcile it with everything they had been told about my business failures. "This is the current balance in my business account." I continued maintaining my calm tone as shocked faces stared at the evidence of my success. "My online jewelry business was acquired last month by Eleanor's investment firm for just over $2 million. I gestured toward Eleanor, who had been observing from the edge of the gathering with the composed expression of someone accustomed to dramatic business revelations. "Eleanor Peterson is the managing partner of Peterson Strategic Investments," I explained. "She has built and sold 3 technology companies and currently manages a portfolio of emerging businesses with combined valuations exceeding $50 million. Eleanor stepped forward with the gracious smile of someone comfortable in business settings, extending her hand to my parents, who appeared too shocked to respond appropriately. "It has been a pleasure working with Kelsey over these past months," Eleanor said, addressing the stunned gathering with the authority that had made her successful in corporate boardrooms. "Her business acumen and work ethic are exceptional, and her company represents exactly the kind of innovative enterprise our firm seeks to support." The revelation was creating visible waves of shock and confusion throughout the gathering as guests tried to process information that contradicted everything they had believed about my circumstances and prospects. Madison's face had gone completely pale as she realized that her speech about internet business fantasies and realistic career planning had been delivered to someone whose internet business had just made her a multi-millionaire. "My business has been profitable from the beginning. I continued generating consistent 6-figure annual revenues for the past 2 years, while building brand recognition that attracted acquisition interest from multiple investment firms." The relatives who had received my mother's phone calls discouraging them from supporting my business were staring at me with expressions of complete bewilderment. The same jewelry business they had been told was an embarrassing hobby had just proven to be worth more money than most of them would earn in their entire careers. The legal settlements with family members who stole my business intelligence and designs provided additional compensation beyond the acquisition price. I added making direct eye contact with Madison and my parents. Corporate espionage and intellectual property theft are serious crimes with significant financial consequences. The mention of legal settlements created a new wave of shocked murmurs as guests realized that the family dynamics they had observed over the years had included criminal activity they had been completely unaware of. My Uncle Robert, who had just finished praising Madison's wisdom about avoiding internet business fantasies, looked like he was struggling to understand how reality had become so disconnected from the family narrative he had believed. "Kelsey," my Aunt Linda said tentatively, "we had no idea your business was so successful. Your parents always said—" "My parents said exactly what they believed," I interrupted gently. The problem was that their beliefs were not based on actual knowledge of my business performance or potential. Eleanor stepped forward again, recognizing that the gathering needed professional context for what they were witnessing. "Kelsey's business represents a textbook example of successful entrepreneurship." Eleanor addressed the crowd. She identified an underserved market, developed superior products, built strong customer relationships, and created scalable systems that justified significant acquisition investment. The validation from someone of Eleanor's obvious professional stature was transforming the shocked silence into a buzz of amazed conversation as guests began to grasp the magnitude of what had just been revealed. The immediate aftermath of my revelation created a social dynamics earthquake that rippled through the graduation party like shockwaves from an explosion. Guests who had been nodding approvingly at Madison's speech about realistic career planning were now staring at me with expressions ranging from amazement to embarrassment to confusion about how they should respond to this complete reversal of expected outcomes. Madison remained frozen near the center of the gathering, her champagne glass still in her hand, but her confident smile replaced by a look of dawning horror as she realized that every word of her speech about internet business fantasies had been delivered to someone whose internet business had just made her wealthy beyond anything their family had ever imagined. My parents appeared to be experiencing some form of shock as they processed the implications of what I had shared. Not only had their assessments of my business been completely wrong, but their own criminal theft of my intellectual property had been revealed to their friends and relatives in the most public and humiliating way possible. Eleanor's presence provided an anchor of credibility that prevented anyone from dismissing my revelation as exaggeration or deception. Her obvious professional accomplishment and calm confirmation of my success made denial impossible, forcing everyone present to confront the reality that their assumptions about my life and choices had been fundamentally incorrect. "I need to sit down," my mother said quietly, reaching for one of the rental chairs that had been arranged around the party space. Her face had lost all color, and she appeared to be struggling to process information that contradicted years of certainty about my poor judgment and unrealistic expectations. The guests began reacting in ways that revealed their character and the authenticity of their previous family loyalty. Some approached me with genuine congratulations and apologies for their past skepticism, while others maintained awkward distance as if my success somehow threatened their own life choices and conventional wisdom. "Kelsey, I owe you an apology," my Aunt Linda said, approaching me with obvious embarrassment. "Carol told all of us that your business was just a hobby that was preventing you from facing reality. We had no idea you had built something so successful." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, appreciating her honesty about the family communications that had shaped everyone's perceptions. "I understand why you believed what you were told. I stopped trying to correct those perceptions years ago. But the most significant conversation was the one I needed to have with my parents about the future of our relationship and the consequences of their choices. I approached them as they sat together, processing the magnitude of their misjudgments and the public nature of their humiliation. "Mom, Dad," I said, taking a chair across from them while Eleanor remained nearby to provide professional perspective. "We need to discuss what happens next." My father removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly, a nervous habit that appeared whenever he was struggling to formulate responses to unexpected situations. "Kelsey, we clearly made mistakes in how we assessed your business," he said carefully. "We were trying to protect you from what we believed were unrealistic expectations. You were not trying to protect me," I replied firmly but calmly. "You were trying to control me by undermining my confidence and sabotaging my success. The legal settlements documented the criminal nature of your behavior." The mention of criminal activity caused several nearby guests to move closer, clearly curious about family dynamics they had never understood or suspected. "But beyond the criminal charges and financial settlements," I continued, "we need to address your current situation and how it relates to the choices you made." I had done extensive research into their financial circumstances, and I knew they were facing potential bankruptcy due to the failed business expansion that had used my stolen intellectual property and the excessive borrowing they had undertaken to fund Madison's education and this graduation party. "I know about the second mortgage on your house and the debt you accumulated trying to compete with my business using stolen information," I said, watching their expressions confirm my research. "I also know that you are facing foreclosure if you cannot make payments that exceed your current income." The revelation that I knew about their financial desperation added another layer of shock to an already overwhelming situation. They had been hiding their money problems while publicly criticizing my business choices, never imagining that I had the resources and connections to investigate their actual circumstances. "I am prepared to pay off your debts and save your house," I continued, "but only under specific conditions that you will need to accept publicly and completely." Eleanor nodded approvingly at my approach, recognizing the business principles involved in negotiating from a position of strength while offering solutions that served everyone's long-term interests. "What conditions?" my mother asked quietly, her voice barely audible above the background conversations of guests who were still processing the evening's revelations. "First, you will publicly apologize to me and to everyone present for your years of undermining my business and attempting to sabotage my success," I said. "Second, Madison will publicly acknowledge her criminal theft and express genuine remorse for her behavior." The conditions were reasonable given the magnitude of their betrayal, but they required the kind of public accountability that people accustomed to projecting superior judgment found difficult to accept. "Third," I continued, "you will respect my business achievements and treat me as an equal family member rather than a child who needs protection from her own poor judgment." Madison had been listening to this negotiation with growing distress as she realized that her criminal behavior was about to be acknowledged publicly in front of law school classmates and professional contacts who would be evaluating her character and judgment. "I cannot have criminal charges on my record," Madison said desperately. "My legal career depends on maintaining a clean background for bar admission and professional licensing. The criminal charges have already been resolved through plea agreements," I replied. "But the public acknowledgement of your behavior is not negotiable if you want my financial assistance." The choice I was offering was clear: accept accountability for their actions and receive financial assistance that would solve their immediate problems or maintain their pride while facing bankruptcy and professional consequences. After several minutes of whispered family consultation, my parents and Madison agreed to my conditions. The public apologies that followed my ultimatum marked a fundamental transformation in our family dynamics that went far beyond simple acknowledgement of my business success. When my father stood up at Madison's graduation party to address the gathering of relatives and friends, he was not simply correcting misinformation about my career choices. He was dismantling years of family hierarchy and conventional wisdom that had positioned him and my mother as arbiters of practical decision-making. "I need to make a public apology to my daughter Kelsey," My father began, his voice carrying the weight of genuine remorse rather than tactical necessity. For years, I dismissed her business as unrealistic and impractical. I was not only wrong about her potential for success, but I actively undermined her efforts in ways that were unfair and, frankly, inexcusable. The gathering listened in complete silence as my father acknowledged his fundamental misjudgments and the damage his skepticism had caused to our relationship and my business development. My wife and I have spent years telling relatives and friends that Kelsey's jewelry business was a hobby that prevented her from pursuing realistic career goals. He continued. The truth is that we never took the time to understand what she was building or to recognize her exceptional talents and work ethic. My mother's apology was more emotional but equally comprehensive. She acknowledged the phone calls she had made to family members discouraging them from supporting my business and admitted that her behavior had been motivated by fear and misunderstanding rather than protective love. I was threatened by Kelsey's independence and success because it challenged everything I believed about appropriate paths for young women. My mother said, tears making her voice unsteady. Instead of celebrating her achievements, I tried to force her back into conventional expectations that had nothing to do with her actual capabilities. But Madison's acknowledgement was the most significant because it addressed the criminal nature of her behavior and its impact on my business and personal life. I stole Kelsey's designs and business information for my own financial benefit. Madison said her legal training evident in the precision of her confession. I betrayed her trust, violated her intellectual property rights, and damaged her business competitive position for selfish reasons. She paused to compose herself before continuing with the complete admission of guilt that my conditions required. I convinced myself that taking her ideas was justified because I needed money for law school, but the truth is that I was jealous of her success and wanted to profit from work I had not done. Madison continued, my behavior was criminal, and it was wrong, and I am grateful that Kelsey is giving me the opportunity to make amends. The public acknowledgement satisfied my requirements for accountability, but the more meaningful transformation occurred in the weeks and months that followed as we rebuilt family relationships on foundations of mutual respect rather than conventional hierarchy. I paid off their mortgage and business debts as promised, eliminating the immediate financial pressures that had motivated their desperate attempts to compete with my success. But more importantly, I established clear boundaries about respectful communication and equal treatment that fundamentally changed how our family operated. Madison entered therapy to address the psychological factors that had led to her theft and betrayal of family relationships. Through that process, she gained insight into the competitive jealousy and entitlement that had driven her criminal behavior and began making genuine efforts to repair our relationship. I spent so many years believing I was smarter and more practical than you, Madison admitted during one of our reconciliation conversations. I could not accept that you had succeeded where I had failed, so I tried to steal your success instead of learning from it. My parents undertook their own process of examining the assumptions and biases that had led them to dismiss my potential and actively sabotage my efforts. They began educating themselves about entrepreneurship and small business development, finally taking the time to understand what I had accomplished and how I had achieved it. We were so focused on protecting you from failure that we could not see your capacity for success, my father reflected months later. We projected our own limitations onto your situation instead of recognizing your unique talents and determination. Eleanor remained a significant presence in our family's transformation, serving as both business mentor and objective perspective on healthy family dynamics. Her own experience building companies while managing family relationships provided valuable insights about maintaining professional success alongside personal connections. Families often struggle to recognize entrepreneurial success because it challenges their assumptions about security and conventional achievement, Eleanor explained. Your parents needed time to understand that business ownership represents stability rather than risk when executed properly. The most satisfying aspect of our family's evolution was watching my parents become genuine supporters of my business growth and expansion plans. They transformed from skeptics who had actively undermined my efforts into advocates who took pride in my achievements and contributed constructive advice based on their own business experience. Within a year of the graduation party revelation, my business had expanded into retail partnerships with luxury boutiques across 3 states, and I was developing a second product line focused on custom bridal jewelry. Eleanor's investment firm had facilitated connections with industry experts and distribution channels that accelerated growth beyond my original projections. Madison completed her therapy and bar admission process, eventually joining a law firm that specialized in intellectual property and small business legal services. She became a valuable resource for my business expansion, providing legal expertise that protected my continued growth while making amends for her past destructive behavior. The Christmas dinner that year was a complete reversal of the family dynamics I had experienced throughout my early 20s. Instead of defending my business choices or justifying my unconventional path, I was sharing expansion plans and celebrating achievements with family members who finally understood and appreciated what I had built. "I am so proud of everything you have accomplished," my mother said as we cleaned up after our holiday meal. "More importantly, I am proud of how you handled our mistakes with such grace and wisdom." The journey from family rejection to genuine support had required years of persistence, significant personal sacrifice, and the courage to maintain my vision despite constant discouragement from the people whose approval I had most wanted. But the final result was better than simple validation of my business success. I had built not only a profitable company, but also authentic family relationships based on mutual respect and recognition of each person's unique contributions and capabilities. The same determination that had driven my entrepreneurial success had also transformed family dynamics that had seemed permanently damaged by years of misunderstanding and betrayal. As I reflected on the complete transformation of my circumstances and relationships, I realized that my parents' initial skepticism had actually contributed to my ultimate success by forcing me to develop self-reliance, determination, and independence that served me well in business and personal relationships. Their laughter at my early efforts had motivated me to prove them wrong, but their eventual recognition of my achievements created the foundation for genuine family connections that honored both conventional success and entrepreneurial innovation. Have you ever had your family doubt your dreams or unconventional choices? How did you handle their skepticism while staying true to your own vision? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below about overcoming family obstacles to achieve your goals. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more inspiring stories about entrepreneurship, family dynamics, and personal triumph. Share this with anyone who needs encouragement to pursue their dreams despite family skepticism. Thank you for joining me on this journey from family rejection to business success and genuine reconciliation. Remember that sometimes the people who doubt you most are the ones who end up becoming your biggest supporters once you prove your capabilities through persistent action and authentic success. May your own dreams find the support they deserve, and may your family relationships grow stronger through honest communication and mutual respect for different paths to achievement.